Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing the Championship preview and predictions, 15th match of the season. So we're nearly a third of the way in already to the season. Unbelievable that it's already 15 games in. I can't believe it. So I've been away, as some of you will know. I've been away for a bit and not really kept up with the fixtures much. So yeah, sorry if I get something a little bit wrong or something. I just simply, I was coming back on Saturday and I missed most of the games. I kept half an eye on this week's fixtures, but we are back and hopefully this will be much better. So let's start off with the Friday night game. QPR, who are in amazing form considering their start of the season, will entertain Aston Villa, who are currently, in the midst of their new manager, Dean Smith, who has had one win and one defeat in his 2 games in charge so far. QPR, they're in decent form, 3 wins and 1 draw from their last 4 games. Wins against Sheffield Wednesday, Ipswich and Reading, and that draw coming against Derby. So yeah, 2 teams that are in contrasting forms. Aston Villa have won 1 game in their last 5 games. QPR have lost just 1 game in their last 5 games, which is very, very good indeed. So QPR, they are currently in 13th place with 20 points so far this season. 6 wins, 2 draws and 6 defeats, but only 2 draws since those 4 games. They'd currently be in the playoffs if they had not had that stupid start to the season where they lost 4 games in a row, conceding 7 against West Brom. Aston Villa, it's a struggling start for them. 4 wins, 6 draws, 4 defeats, 22 goals scored, 22 goals conceded. It is so average, it's unbelievable. 18 points. I feel like they need to go there and win. I think it'll be really, really difficult. They lost on Tuesday night against Norwich. I actually watched that game and it was okay for Villa, but in the second half, Norwich were the better side and managed to get two goals and probably overall deserved the win. I'm going to go for a 1-1. I don't think Villa will go there and lose, but I don't think they'll win. I'm going to go for a 1-1, which would be a decent point for QPR as they continue their momentum up the table. Aston Villa, they need to start turning, start getting victories because they can't make a playoff push if they continue to lose and draw games. They're not too far away from the playoffs, and a win here could take them all the way up into 10th place. Despite being all the way down to 16th, they are only 8 points off the top spot. So a win here could be really, really helpful. But I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw between QPR and Aston Villa. Next, we go to Saturday's games. We have an early kickoff this Saturday. This is going to be a really, really interesting game. Middlesbrough will entertain Derby. 2 sides that are currently in the top 5. Middlesbrough currently in 2nd and Derby are currently in 5th. Derby had a brilliant result in midweek, beating West Brom 4-1 away from home. Just 1 defeat in their last 5 games with a win against Sheffield United, another side that are doing extremely well. However, it does seem that they are struggling against sides that are not so good, drawing with QPR and losing to Bolton. That's the only 1 win for Bolton in the last 10 games or something. So really, really poor that they drew with Norwich as well. Middlesbrough, their form seems to be a bit sporadic at the moment. Hull 1-1 draw followed by a 2-0 win against Ipswich. But before the international break, in the final game before the international break, they lost to Nottingham Forest 2-0. They followed that up with a great win at Sheffield Wednesday at Hillsborough 2-1, but drew against Rotherham 0-0. I think this is going to be really, really tight. I don't think there's going to be an opportunity, but I do feel that Middlesbrough will probably nick it 1-0. That's what seems to be what they do. So I'm going to go 1-0 to Middlesbrough there. And then we have a whole bunch of 3 o'clock kickoffs. The first of which is Birmingham versus Sheffield Wednesday. Birmingham have finally started turning their draws into wins. 3 wins on the bounce against Rotherham, Stoke and Reading has seen them pick up 9 points from their last 3 games. Sheffield Wednesday, after a great start, they have just started to fade a little bit. One win in their last 5 games with draws against Leeds and West Brom. Both of those, they were in the lead, and then defeats against Middlesbrough and QPR 3-0. I think this will be another win for Birmingham as they continue their rise up the table. They could go as far as 7th with a victory. Really impressed that they finally started turning these draws into wins, and if they continue to do that, they could be in a playoff push come the end of the season. So I'm going to go for a Birmingham win here. I'm going to go 2-0 to the Blues. Next, we go to a relegation 6-pointer potentially, and that is Bolton versus Hull. So I've already pointed out the bad form of Bolton. Just that one win against Derby in their last 10 games. Defeats against Sheffield United, defeats against QPR, Middlesbrough, Stoke, Blackburn, and most recently against Nottingham Forest, where they lost 3-0. They have picked up several draws against Rotherham, Ipswich and Preston. 3 sides that are going to be down there at the end of the season, and they are going to be very disappointed that they could not get some wins. If they do end up getting relegated, they'll look at those kind of results and think, if we'd have won those, we'd have been safe. I think all 3 of those were away from home. And this one is at home. Hull, they're in terrible form as well. They're in the same boat as Bolton, just one win in their last sort of 8 or 9 games, and that was a 2-0 win over Ipswich, who are currently bottom of the table. In their last 5 games, they've picked up just 2 points with 3 defeats. One thing you can say about the last 5 games is there have not been many goals. Those 3 games that they have lost by a single goal, 1-0. The draws 1-1. So you can't expect many goals. I'm going to go for 0-0. I think that they'll get a draw. Hull, they seem very tight. Bolton aren't exactly known for conceding goals, but scoring many goals. So I'm going to go 0-0 for that one. Next, we go to Bristol City and Stoke. And Bristol City continue their weird form. So they won 3 games in a row, and then they lost 2, drew 2, lost 1, and it looked like they were just going to sink in the mid-table. But since they come back from the international break, 2 1-0 wins, 1 against Brentford and 1 against Hull. This has seen them rise back up to 8th place, and we'll be looking to getting into the playoffs with a win over Stoke. Stoke, 2 wins, 2 draws and 1 defeat, which isn't bad form when you think about it. That's the same form as Leeds and Middlesbrough, who sit in 1st and 2nd. But unfortunately for Stoke, they currently sit in 17th place. I feel if they do lose this game, it'll only be a matter of time before Gary Rowett loses his job. I'm going to go for a 1-0 win for Bristol City. That would be a really good win for them, and that could potentially take them into the playoffs. Stoke, I feel like it's only a matter of time until they get sacked. You can't just carry on like that. They've spent so much money, and they need a bit more than what they are receiving. I thought they do really well. They signed really well, but it simply hasn't worked for Gary Rowett. Millwall versus Ipswich is next. We all know how bad Ipswich have been. Just 1 win so far this season, that coming against Swansea, but 3 defeats in the last 4 games with 1 draw as well against Birmingham City. Millwall, their form has been up and down as well, but they've started to turn a corner a little bit. 2 wins, 1 draw, 2 defeats. 2 out of their last 3 games have ended in victory, which is very good. And I expect Millwall to get a win again against Ipswich. I'm going to go 3-1 to Millwall. This will continue Ipswich at the bottom of the table, and I feel it'll only be a matter of time, similar to Rowett, that Hurst will get sacked. The fact is, there's only so much time you can give, and if it doesn't turn away soon, they'll be cut adrift. They are already 4 points behind 21st from safety. Millwall, they are currently on 13 points and still struggling, but a win here would just take them away from the bottom 3, which would be very valuable. Really struggling start for Millwall. Next, we go to Norwich and Brentford, and 2 sides which have had contrasting last 5 games. Norwich, they've won their last 2 games since coming back from the international break. 2-1 against Nottingham Forest, and then 2-1 against Aston Villa. Their other games, 1-0 defeat against Stoke, which was very poor. But I don't think they deserved to lose that game. They were very much on top, but they could not score. A 1-1 draw against Derby, who are currently in the playoffs, and a 1-0 win against Wigan. Brentford, they had 3 draws in a row: Reading, Birmingham and Leeds before the international break. And during the international break, they lost their manager, Dean Smith, who has gone to Aston Villa. Since then, they have appointed Thomas Frank, who was already at the club, and they have lost both of their games so far. A 1-0 defeat at home against Bristol City, followed by a 4-3 defeat against Preston. Preston's side that have been struggling so far this season. I feel like this is only going to go one way. I'm going to go a 2-0 win to Norwich. Norwich will continue their good form. They're already in 6th place. A win could see them rise to the top of the table if results went their way. Personally, I can't see that happening. There's too many sides in front of them, but they could continue their playoff momentum so far. Next, we go to two sides struggling at the bottom of the table, and that is Preston versus Rotherham. So Preston are currently in 19th and Rotherham are in 21st. Both are currently on 13 points, but Preston have a much better goal difference than Rotherham. Rotherham are on -10. And unfortunately, Preston are on -5, which sees them not only leapfrog Rotherham on goal difference, but Millwall as well. So Millwall currently are facing Ipswich, and Bolton are facing Hull. So several sides are playing teams in and around each other, which could make an interesting week down the bottom of the table. Rotherham, they have only lost one of their last 5 games, but unfortunately for them, the other 4 have resulted in draws against Middlesbrough, Bolton, Bristol City and Stoke. Their only defeat coming against Birmingham. Preston, they have started to turn things around a little bit after a 2-3 defeat to West Brom. They have won 2 and drawn 2. A 3-3 draw with Aston Villa coming from behind there. A 4-0 win against Wigan, a 1-1 draw against Hull, and then a 4-3 win against Brentford, where they were lucky to get the win after being very, very comfortable. I think they were 3 goals up at one stage, Preston. I think this is only going to go one way. Their home form is pretty decent. I'm going to go a 3-0 win to Preston. This would see them move away from Rotherham onto 16 points, which could potentially drag Bolton into it, who are also on 16 points. Next, we have Sheffield United and Wigan. Two sides who've had very, very decent starts to the season. Wigan are currently in 12th after dropping out of the playoffs. They have been in the playoffs for several weeks, but only one win in the last 5 games has seen them just drift. Sheffield United, they have had 3 wins, 1 draw and 1 defeat in the last 5 games, which is them joint top of the table, but are in 3rd place on goal difference. So having a look at their current form, Sheffield United have not won in there since returning from the international break. A 2-1 defeat against Derby and then a 1-1 draw against Stoke. But before that, wins against Hull, Blackburn and Millwall. Wigan, they have only won 1 of their last 5 games, which came against West Brom. Defeats against Preston, Norwich and Millwall, and a draw with Swansea. I'm going to go for a 1-0 win to Sheffield United. I think they'll have just enough to beat this Wigan side, but I don't expect many goals. It would be a really, really good 3 points. Once again, they could end up top of the league come the end of play. Swansea versus Reading next. Swansea have been a very, very weird side. They're currently in 10th. Their form has been very, very average. 5 wins, 5 draws, 4 defeats, 15 goals scored, 11 conceded, 2 wins, 1 draw and 2 defeats in their last 5 games. Reading now currently in the relegation zone, 22nd place, 3 defeats, 1 draw and 1 win. That win came against Millwall, defeats coming against QPR, West Brom and Birmingham. Swansea, their wins came against QPR and Blackburn. But they did lose a couple of weeks ago to Ipswich, which was a very, very big surprise. So we're currently in a very similar situation to Reading. However, I think they deserve to win that game. I think they deserve to win that game, and I really, really do believe that they will win this one. I'm going to give 2-1 to Swansea. Finally, the last 3 o'clock game is West Brom versus Blackburn. West Brom suffered a surprise 4-1 hammering at the hands of Derby. Before that, they also lost against Wigan 1-0. Before the international break, they had 2 wins and 1 draw against Preston, Reading and Sheffield Wednesday. With the draw there, Blackburn, their form has been up and down. They lost 3-1 to Swansea in midweek after a great 2-1 victory over Leeds. So you never know what you're going to expect. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. I'm not sure how this one will go, so I'm going to sit on the fence and go 2-2. Finally, a really, really interesting game to look forward to is Leeds versus Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest are currently in 7th place after picking up some wins. Finally, after drawing 7 of their opening 14 games already, which is exactly half. 2 wins, 2 draws and 1 defeat in their last 5 games. Leeds currently sit top of the mountain with 2 wins, 2 draws and 1 defeat. A win here for either side would be a very, very good 3 points indeed. Nottingham Forest, they won against Bolton in midweek, but did lose on Saturday to Norwich 2-1. Leeds, they lost on Saturday to Blackburn, but did beat Ipswich 2-0 in midweek. I think this is going to be really tough. I'm going to go for another draw. I'm going to go 1-1. So that is my preview and predictions. I don't think we have any fixtures on Sunday, but I will check. No, there are no fixtures on Sunday, and there are no fixtures in midweek. We turn our attentions to the Carabao Cup. Norwich, Nottingham Forest are both involved on Tuesday night, and on Wednesday night, Frank Lampard's derby go to Chelsea. Also involved is Middlesbrough when they host Crystal Palace. But most teams will have a week off, getting ready for the weekend's action. So thank you so much for tuning in for this video. I really, really appreciate it. Subscribe if you're new, like you've just seen. Hit the hit the like button if you enjoyed it. My name is Mike, and I will see you soon.